Thank you. Thank you, Maria, and big thanks to B&H and the whole audio video team and the production stage making this all possible. So yeah, my name's Justin Odisho. Thanks to everyone for coming out. And great to see how many video editors there are in here. That's also cool. Who in here uses Adobe Premiere? Wow, almost everyone. Now who uses Final Cut? All right, now you guys know who to go gang up on after. No, what about DaVinci? DaVinci people? We got a lot of DaVinci people, I hear it. But the great thing about video editing is, even though I'm going to be teaching in Adobe Premiere today, a lot of the concepts are universal. So hopefully I'll try to cram in some cool ideas and effects, and you can translate them to your own software as well. I've got a whole bunch of stuff I want to get through. What always happens is you're not always able to get through everything. So I'm going to try to do the fun stuff, and we'll also have time for some questions and some and we'll even play a little game with audience participation at the end. So yeah, my name's Justin Odisho. I've been, this is my YouTube channel that you see on the screen here. And the number that I'm most proud of is this right here. It's 1,000. I've made over 1,000 videos since about 2011, mostly teaching different Adobe softwares from Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, which maybe you've seen some of them. And yeah, you can check all that out on your free time. So let's get into business. So we're going to start out just like how everyone always does. We're going to start out from opening the program. I'm going to start from start to finish and show you guys some cool tips, tricks, some of the new features in Adobe. There's a lot of cool AI stuff that's happening. And again, I'm going to try to get through as much as I can. So there is a new home screen in Adobe Premiere. If any of you guys have been familiar with it, it's this home button. Well, this is the one that you're used to, but now when you click New Project, you get these three tabs: Import, Edit, and Export. And I'll double tap in on areas. I know the screen might be a little small for people in the back. Don't worry. To begin, you can start by importing media, or like I always like to do, I just like to make a project called Untitled. No, that was a joke, but I know we all do it. But we'll name this one Bild Expo. And although you can import straight from here, so like if I go to my stock footage folder and highlight it, you can also drag and drop stuff right from your desktop. So I'll hit create. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, some raw photos, JPEGs, videos. So you might see some weird errors pop up. But I don't want it all in one time, so I'm just going to delete that. But what we have now is a project that we've created. And if I double click on this, we have all of our files. And I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with a lot of this, but there is some new stuff, such as the freeform view. So if I click this little freeform button, these three little rectangles in the bottom, this allows you to move stuff over, kind of like how you're used to on a desktop, which is nice. The funny thing about video editing is we're the ones that are supposed to be organizing the footage, but a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, but me, I like to work a little bit in an unorganized, organized way. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. But there's some cool new stuff in here, but we're not going to get too in-depth into boring file management stuff today. Here's a pro tip for everyone. Whenever you don't know where you are in the program, this is one of the hardest things for beginners. Just go to Window, Workspace, Reset to save layout. That'll always just bring you back to home base. I know when I was first starting out, especially in After Effects, and a lot of you guys might be familiar, you click something, a bunch of stuff opens up, and then you don't know where you are anymore. So Window, Workspace, Reset, always keep that in your back pocket. But I wanted to start off today by talking about intro text and titles, because there's some simple tricks and some new fun stuff that's in Premiere. So I'm going to find some footage to make an intro, and let's use, here's where I'm going to go the drag and drop method. I'm going to go to my folder, and I visited Japan some time ago, and that was fun. So I actually shot this footage on my iPhone, which is a whole other conversation. But as you can see, I can just click and drop it, and then I can drag it, drop it into my timeline. It'll say this clip is different from the sequence setting size. You can keep or change it, but I'm just going to click keep. So this is just some footage, and I'll make it bigger for everyone. Why not? This is just some footage of a train passing by. That's audio that you hear there. So just some nice sample footage. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you guys how to create a cool text effect where the train masks out your text title, because every video does need a title intro, right? So to get to the title text, we're going to go to our toolbar here. That's in this little corner, and we're going to click it. And also when you're editing, you can use any shortcuts like T. It depends if you're on a PC or Mac, but shortcuts are your friend. So we're going to be working in the program window. And on my timeline, I'm just going to scrub all the way to the beginning. And I'll click and type out whatever I want. So let's type out my name presents. All right? So one tip I have for everyone with titles is just keep it simple, and you can't really go wrong with it. If I highlight the text and go to Essential Graphics, this will open up our Essential Graphics panel on the right-hand side. And although there's a whole bunch of buttons here, it's pretty simple, actually. So one thing you're always probably going to want to do is center your text. So you can just click these buttons here, align center, and align horizontal and vertical center. That's also in After Effects. So actually a lot of stuff that you might be seeing here translates to Photoshop, After Effects, and Premiere. So you might learn more than you think. You can also adjust the size and things like that. But again, I'm going to try to assume that most people are familiar with these sort of tools and not spend too much time on it. And let's pick a better font. I always like to go to, there's probably some graphic designers in here that would know better than me. But I always like to go to Futura. And also some fun stuff is we can add a drop shadow. So it's a little hard to see the white on this bright daytime shot. So in this bottom right corner here, you have some more options. And I'm just clicking that little shadow checkbox. And I'll increase that a bit. All right, so we've got a text title, and that's created this pink little graphic item in our timeline. Whenever you're working in Premiere, everything is color coded, so you'll get familiar with it. Photos and text are like purple, and videos are blue. You can actually change them in the preference window to be whatever you want. But again, let's stick to the fun stuff. So if I want this text to get erased as the train goes by, what I'm going to do, there's actually 3 ways you could do it. You can use a mask, you can use a wipe transition, or you can use a crop. Since this is a pretty straight up and down line, we can get away with using the crop effect. So I'm going to go to the effects panel and search for one called crop. That's actually a nice thing too in the effects panel is you can just search. So there's so much stuff in there that sometimes you might forget what folder it's in. You can always just type in C, and as I'm typing, it's populating results that contain C, R, O, and then P. Okay, so the crop effect, that's in the transform folder, and I'm going to click and drag this effect onto this pink little strip there. And then in the left-hand side, we can open up the Effect Controls panel. The Effect Controls panel is another really sort of home-based panel when you're working with effects. This contains everything in it from position, scale, and then every effect you added and those effect parameters. So for the crop effect, there's left, top, right, and bottom, and then there's also feather. There's also zoom and other things, but we'll touch on that. So in this case, we just want to crop in from the left so that the train wipe reveals or sort of hides the text, right? So a couple quick workflow ways to do this are using the arrow keys on your keyboard. Every time you press the right arrow key, it moves over 1 frame. If you hold Shift and press the right arrow key, it moves over 5 frames. So that's a nice little tip for you. So we're going to frame over all the way until, if you can see, the front of the train just begins touching our title text. And that's right here at this frame. And we're going to add a keyframe for the crop effect. So we're going to add a keyframe for the left crop effect. And that's this little stopwatch icon here. So I'm sure many of you are videos, you're familiar with keyframes, but these allow us to go from one amount to another amount in a smooth way. So, by the way, how is it, everyone? Can you see the diamonds and everything? Okay, seeing some, probably less head nods in the back, but I'll try to explain. Okay, so right now it's at 0% crop at the beginning of the clip. So we're going to click on this right when the train starts coming. And again, the arrow keys are really useful. So I'm just pressing up on my arrow key. And if you see that there, the text is starting to erase. So we can kind of just eyeball this. So the workflow here, we're going to have to create a lot of keyframes, but it's faster than you think. I'm just going to scrub over just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to highlight the left crop amount and press up on my arrow key. Another thing that you'll notice is the train, because it's going so fast, is a little bit blurry, whereas the crop is giving us a sharp edge. And that's where things like the edge feather amount come in handy. So I can increase the edge feather amount, kind of so that it's matching the blur of that train. That's a nice tip for you. And because this is going in a straight line, I can just go chunk by chunk using my arrow keys. And remember, shift up also does the same thing for keyframe effects. It goes up more than 1% at a time. And we're going to just go until we get to the end here. And if you notice, every single time I adjust the crop amount, it's adding a keyframe. So if you kind of can't see what's going on when you're working at home, you can go to this program window and you can zoom in. Like right now it's just at fit, but you can go in 150% if you really need to get in there and say, am I doing this right, or is this edge really meeting up? So for us that are in a time crunch, you can be as tedious on this as you want. If I zoom into my effect controls, you can see I've created, a dozen or so keyframes, but they're not all evenly spaced, and we're not going to know until we press play. So we get to the end here and we crop out 100%. And what we're going to do is press play and then see how that goes. So I think I might have got it first one. We might need to tweak it just a little bit, but if I press play, as you can see, the text just kind of wipes away as the train. We've created an illusion as if it's getting masked behind the train. And you could do the same thing the other way. So starting 100% cropped and then revealing the text. In this case, it's wiping it away. Now, so many of you might know some basic stuff like that, but here's another sort of advanced tip that some of you might not be familiar with. What if I wanted the text to be behind the train, in front of the train, but behind this red pole that's on the train station? So one way that I'm going to do that is by sandwiching the layers. So I'm going to take this train clip, and we all know how to right-click, copy-paste, but a quick shortcut in Premiere is holding Option, clicking, and dragging. And that just you can drag out a whole other copy of that clip. So what I've done is I've dragged out a whole other copy of the train clip above my intro text. I'll just press C on my keyboard. That'll activate my razor tool there, and I can cut it. And Premiere and Final Cut and other things, they have snap to, so it snaps right to the edge of the other clip based on which clips are targeted. But the shortcuts you're going to want to get really familiar with are C, that's the cut tool, V, well, technically the razor tool, but speaking of B&H, like things actually used to get cut by a razor. That's why it's a razor. But now everything's digital, so this doesn't really make sense anymore, does it? But I'll press V to grab my move tool, and I'll just delete the other end of that clip where the text isn't. So why did I create this duplication? Because I want to just take the red pole from this photo. So whereas we used cropping on the text, we're going to use masking on this. Masking can be great where you have slightly, shapes that are not just straight, like lines or circles. Even though this pole is, there's a bit of movement on it. So I'm going to show you how we're going to work with that. So what I like to do is zoom in a little bit on my program window, move over to that section, and then I'm going to go to my effect controls panel. Make sure you always have the clip that you're working with highlighted. And under every single effect or layer, or even like we were working with the crop effect, you'll always see these three shapes, which is the ellipse, 4-point polygon mask, or the pen tool mask. So these are how we're going to create a mask, in this case, just on the opacity of the clip, which means right now it's at 100%. And if we take it all the way down to 0, let me hide things so you guys see what's going on. This is at 0%, and then this is at 100%. So we're just going to mask out the red pole. I'll start with a 4-point polygon mask. That'll open this up. And if you're in your program window, you can just move this mask around. And I'll just zone in here on this. This is where you could zoom in to get as fine detailed as you want. And really, our text is only in the middle, so you could mask out the whole thing if you want to play it safe, but I'll just mask out this good portion of it. And here's where you might be wondering, there's a little bit of camera shake in this handheld clip. So we've masked it out, but what good is it? Because as soon as I move, the mask is no longer aligned, and it'll be really painstaking to keyframe every single thing. So a really useful tip that some of you might not know about is, you might think this is only available in After Effects, rotoscoping, or something. But for basic shapes in Premiere, there's actually mask tracking with these basic shapes. So if you see this play button here, it says track selected mask forward. So if I press play on that, as long as we did a good selection to start, Premiere will automatically go through frame by frame. And because it's a simple shape, it will just sort of track it. Now, if you're working with like someone's hand that's coming closer, that you're probably going to need to go into After Effects. But let's see how it did. This is all unscripted. And you can see, I think it did a pretty good job following that mask. So now when I turn all the layers back on like a sandwich, we've got the red bar, we've got my intro text, and then we turn on the original clip underneath. So if you kind of pretend like we just made a sandwich, I can create more advanced intro text effects like this with, if I press, let me full screen it for you guys. I'll be selfish. Okay. If I press play, we've got all three things happening. So it's little subtle tricks like this. Yeah, it's just simple, plain Futura text font, but it's just little things like this that make it a nice title. You can steal that idea and play with it. You don't have to do all three, but you can imagine you can do the same thing for someone walking by or a pillar or a column. So that's just one idea for you. But another cool thing I wanted to show you guys that Adobe's been building out is a lot of After Effects integration into Premiere. So I'm not even logged in, or I'm not even connected to the internet right now, but on this right-hand side, if we go to this Essential Graphics panel that we were just in, that they've been building out, we have this Browse tab. So here there's a bunch of, some that come with your Creative Cloud subscription, others I'm sure you could find third-party and whatnot. And actually, even on my YouTube, I have a video. You can even make your own. We're not going to get into that today, but you can even make your own of these in After Effects. And what are they? These are preset graphic templates. So if I click and drag one of these on the timeline, it might say media offline, but we love that screen. OK. So right now you're like, what's happening? It's like some weird hieroglyphics. But in the Essential Graphics panel, this is basically a template for us to load in videos of our own, and it's going to give us a really beautiful intro that looks like it took 2-3 hours to create, and it didn't really take all that long at all. So in the Essential Graphics panel for each of them, there's different parameters and sections. So this one's pretty simple. You go to Media Replacement, and you'll find that a lot in a lot of these. And you have center, right, and left media. So let me go to my project media panel and find some example clips to replace this with. In this case, I can even work with photos, but it works with videos too. So I will just click and drag. So that's the nice thing that's happening, is a lot of click and drag ability, because no one can mess that up. We'll see that the center media has already been filled in. And then let's click and drag for the right media. And we'll click and drag for the left media. So this particular one is cool. It's kind of like a film strip style aesthetic that's been getting really popular. And if I press play on that by default, we've got this whole animation with the film strips. We've got ability to adjust the center, right, and left media. And that could also be a cool intro or outro for your YouTube channel or whatever you're working on. So if I drop down those menus, also you can reposition them and adjust the scale, things like that. I'm sure you guys are able to figure that out. But not only is there cool stuff like that, there's even transitions as well, and other text titles. So a lot of these are using After Effects capabilities, but they're just built into Premiere, already ready for you to use. So for example, this one here, it's like a transition. It's almost like a in-between slide. And in order to use it, all you have to do is drag it on your timeline. And let's say I have 2 video clips. So let's go to my project media. Let's see. If I just drag 2 video clips in, all I have to do is drag this graphic template in between, and it acts as a transition. And you can also change the color of that. So in the Essential Graphics panel, this is where you have all the parameters. So for the last one, it was replace media and scale. This one, it can be color, so it can be your team or company colors, whatever you want in there. You can change the colors to be whatever you want. Hey, why not some B&H style colors? But if you press play, you can adjust everything about it. And those are just a couple sample ones in there. But you can, at your leisure, browse around at different ones. And even if you don't use Adobe, one point I'll make there is, a lot of us, when we see some really cool creative edit or we see some really cool effect, we might think, wow, how did they do that? Or they must be really good. I'll never be able to do that. But one thing I've learned over the years as an editor is I'll say a number even as high as like 80% or a really large amount of things that you might think that you can't do. It's not that you can't do them. It's that you just don't really know where the tool is. It's just a preset or a tool somewhere that you're not too familiar with. Obviously, there are still some really amazing people that do some handcrafted stuff that, but keep that in mind, Okay, so going past intros and text, another really fun thing that we have in Premiere is blending modes and effects. So we're kind of dive into some cool effects, some of my favorite effects. Let's find some good footage. Oh, here's a fun one. Speaking of new features that Adobe is building out, we're going to search. I have a clip in here named Wes. Okay. So I'm sure there's a lot of Wes Anderson fans in here. I haven't seen the new movie, actually, but I pulled it up because he's the first person I thought of when I thought of like cool color grading. So there's some really cool color grading features that are being introduced that use, I want to say, almost like AI, Firefly sort of engines to do stuff automatically. And one of them is called color match. So if I go to the Lumetri color panel, that's here on the right-hand side, and we go to the color wheels and match section, we can open up this comparison view. So this will split our program window into a reference frame and a current frame. So I've dragged in this screen grab from a trailer, and I'll even just scale it up. Let's say I like these pastel colors and I kind of want to get something similar as a base. And also, you don't need to do this just to get a similar color grade. Let's say you have two different cameras that you're shooting a documentary with or something, and one of them is just giving a slightly different color than the other. In any case, we're going to have our reference frame, which we can adjust with this slider in the program window, this little slider right here. And we're going to keep that reference frame on the one that we want. And then I've got this other sample clip, kind of a similar desert vibe. And if we open up the Lumetri color panel, normally you do have all these basic correction sections, curves, and whatnot. But in the color wheels and match, if you just press this one button, apply match, it'll create an instant match of color that is pretty close. I mean, you're not going to get, it's not shot with the same camera, it's not shot with all the same lighting, so it's never going to be perfect. But you get this blue and yellow pastel as a start, and you can still go into basic correction and adjust things like the exposure, contrast. So you can be working from a reference frame to try to achieve a look similar, let's say, to you or your client wants. And you can then tweak it from there. That's a nice starting point. And once you're done with the reference frame, you can just go to the color wheels section and you can close comparison view. And now we have that similar pastel color as a starting point on this clip. So if I turn it off and on, and we can always, again, adjust things from there. So there's a lot of cool color tools that are available in Premiere. I know the DaVinci people are like, ours is better. But there's still some really cool stuff that's been built in here. And another cool one that I like is this one here called HSL Secondary. So if we have a clip with some trees in it, so let's see. Let's use this clip here. It's a little dark, but we've got some green in the trees. So let me increase the exposure a bit. We've got some green in these trees, and let's say we wanted to make it feel more like fall or autumn and make it more of an orange or red. If we go to the HSL Secondary section, which stands for hue, saturation, lightness, or luminance. I always get it mixed up. Okay, so if we click this little ink dropper, we can tell Adobe which color are we going to be working on today. So I'm going to just click the ink dropper, drag it around these. And if I check this box here, it'll show me what the selection currently is. And then I can even fine tune it with these sliders. So I can drag them in or out, and I can feather them in or out of the different saturation and hue ranges. So this is a cool way that we can select out just the green parts of this image. And then let's say we want to influence those colors to be a little bit more autumny. Now, I'll just click on this correction section, and I can push it a little bit more towards the orange, and I can also change the temperature a bit. Now, it's getting into the tree bark a little bit, so that's where you'll go into your set color, and you can adjust things a bit. So you can fine tune it. It's of course going to work better on some clips than others, but tools like this do give you a lot of flexibility for doing custom edits, like changing the color. And you can even use this to change a t-shirt color. Again, it's going to work much better for plain colors, plain color t-shirts and stuff, but you can use this to even make a color rotate from like red, green to blue. Okay, so the other cool thing that we're going to get into is blending modes. Ooh, I kind of got to go a little fast to show you guys the fun stuff. Okay, so this one's going to be useful to you whether you use Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, or probably any editor. And that's a concept known as blending modes. This is how you take two clips and you blend them together. So here I have a clip of some birds flying, and I chose this one because of the contrast in it. It's got a nice plain background and some good contrast with the shape of the birds. And I'm going to show you guys how you can create effects that seem like they're custom and you can't really get them in a preset pack or a plugin pack. because they're using organic videos. I like to call these organic effects. Like if they're in a grocery store, these ones would cost more. Okay, so let's say I have this clip here, and I want to create a cool, fun overlay. A lot of times, I don't know, if you go to concerts or any sort of stage things, they always have some cool videos playing in the background with some abstract effects and lights and whatnot. So if I want to blend these two videos together, I can just drag one of them on top of the other. And in the opacity section of the Effect Controls panel, we have some basic things. So again, we can always mask things, but that's not what we want in this case. And we can always just lower the opacity, so like 50-50, which can actually look cool in some cases. You can fade in and out. But again, I'm going to try to get a little bit more advanced so you guys can get your, I want to say money's worth, but B&H put this on for free, which is nice. But you can get your time's worth out of me. So the other things that you can do are blend with these mathematical sort of blending modes. So you have the darkening ones, and if you notice, they're all delineated with a little line. So multiply will only show like the darker portions. And since we have this nice clear sky and the dark birds, we get this cool blending effect that's happening with multiply. Lighten will only show the lighter portions through, so we kind of get the opposite. But what if we take it one step further? So let's combine some of those lumetri color tools that we just went into with these blending modes so that we don't just have to be stuck with how the footage was originally. So if I go to the curves section, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with curves. That would take a whole other hour to break down how this little line works, which is funny. But basically, the portions on the left are the shadows, the portion on the right are the highlights. So if I drag the highlights down, you see we're influencing the whole image to be darker. Let me make this bigger for you guys, gotta be mindful. So you can go to Window, Workspace, and actually just go to color. It'll change the whole thing, bring up all these color windows. But I'm gonna make this bigger and make this bigger. Okay, so again, like I was saying, if you drag this down, it influences the color. If you drag the shadows, it influences those. And typically what we do with the curves is we add a little bit of a curve. So if we want to add some contrast, we darken the darks and we lighten the brights. So while I was playing with this clip, I thought, what if we just went all the way and just created sort of a stencil of these birds? You wouldn't normally do this with any other clip than a clear sky because it'll create a lot of weird artifacting. If you ever mess up, another tip is just double click. If you double click, it always resets you back to nothing. So I use the curves here to just create a black and white silhouette of these birds. And if you really wanted to be extra careful, you could go to the basic correction. You could lower the saturation so there's no color in there. And you could even mess with the exposure. But now we've sort of got the stencil of the birds. And I'll go to Window, Workspace, Reset. See, even I have to go back to home base sometimes. Open up the effects. Okay, so now when I use the darken or multiply blending modes, we purely get this cool bird shape that's happening. I don't know, this could be like part of a movie or something. That's your guys' job to be creative. I'm just teaching you the tools. Okay, so and another cool thing though, if I go to the Effect Controls panel, there's an effect called, here I am messing everything up. Window Effects is what I want. Okay, so in the curve section, I can just use it to invert the colors even though there is an invert effect. I can just swap the dark and the light, and now we've got an inverted bird clip, and I can change the blending mode there to screen or lighten. So essentially we've created this cool little fancy overlay on this clip. So you can use that for I've done it with butterflies, birds. I'm sure you could get creative with how you're blending two clips together. And then another thing is you can even blend photos and videos together too. So just because we're video editing doesn't mean that we're not going to be using photos or that we shouldn't use photos in our videos. A lot of times you're making slideshows or things like that. So let's sort our project media by type. So let's see. I'm going to go back. I have everything in folders. You know what? Let's just go back to my folders. Drag and drop never fails. Okay, so I've got this stock photo here of just some paper, like a close-up of a book. So this is just sort of an idea for you to maybe keep in mind, because a lot of times when we're editing video, we might get stuck in this whole video zone that we forget that we can be photographers too, or use photos. And the same things that I was talking about with blending modes earlier could apply to a clip like this. So let's add this looking out of an airplane window clip. So we have some looking out of a plane window footage. And then we have some close-up of some text. So if I take that clip, firstly of all, I could put it on a blending mode like soft light or overlay, and that can create these cool effects. And then I can also animate things. So I can adjust the scale, and I can adjust the position. So the same way we used keyframes for the crop effect earlier, I can do similar things here. So I can make it gently scroll a little bit from left to right as the clip goes on. And maybe I can even make it gently zoom in. That way things don't look so static. And we can create different effects with text and video. Obviously, I would probably tweak it a bit, but there's no limit to what you can't combine between 1, 2, or even 3 videos. So I wanted to, since I see my time going, I wanted to play like a little game with the audience here. Speaking of combining and creating custom effects. So I want a random, let's see, let's open up the window panel. I need some random effects that I'm going to combine. So I can't really flip a coin. So what did I do here? Let's close and open the effects panel. Oh, there it is. I put the effects panel on the wrong side. Okay, so I kind of wanted to do this fun game where I take 2 random effects, and we might need to try a couple times because not all the effects are made to be combined. Some of them are purely functional. And maybe 2 or 3, and we're going to try to create a custom transition and save it, or try to create a custom effect. So could I get someone to raise their hand and tell me their name? Okay, what's your name? Adam. Okay, Adam's name starts with an A. So we're going to use something in the adjust folder. So we're going to use the extract effect. And then could I get someone to raise their hand and tell me a number? From 1 to 19? 8. Okay, so we're going to use the extract effect here in the adjust folder for Adam. And the number 8, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the immersive video folder. So let's grab the VR digital glitch. That should be cool. I got to do this quick. We got 5 minutes. So hopefully these 2 effects look good. Okay. So we're going to grab some footage. And okay, so the extract effect. Let's grab this footage. and this footage. So the extract effect, let's see. I keep losing my panel now. All right. Here it is. So the extract effect is cool. It kind of does what I was just talking about with the curves, with the birds, except for, let's say your clip wasn't conveniently already a clear blue sky. The extract effect just takes things and takes them to their black and white levels. So in the effect controls panel, you really only have two things, the black input and the white input, and also the softness. This is actually a really cool effect. Good job, Adam, for being named Adam. And you can play around with it, but basically you get these black and white extractions. So what I'll do is I'll use this clip and blending modes to fill in a video inside of a video sort of effect. So we're going to take this other video clip. Let's get some with a little bit more motion in it. So project media. How about these ocean waves, this pool wave? Because we know that when we use blending modes like screen or lighten, they only fill in the dark parts of the image. And because we just took that other clip and we extracted it out to be black and white, when I put the lighten effect, we get these cool pool waves inside of this man's body. And I can adjust the input levels to my liking, more or less. I can even invert them. And now we get this cool effect where we've got the water rippling clip playing inside of this guy walking in this parking structure. Kind of looks pretty cool. I don't know what you might use it for again. But the other effect that we grabbed was the VR. The VR from the immersive video. VR digital glitch is a cool one. And because we have two clips together, I'm actually going to highlight these, right-click, and nest them together. Or you can also make an adjustment layer with File, New Adjustment Layer. But now I'm going to add that VR digital glitch on top. So now we've taken those two clips, we've made them into a one video inside of another, and we're applying an effect on top of everything that we just did, which is this digital glitch. This is a cool effect, actually. It has animation already built in. So now we have this water inside of this other video and some cool glitch happening, which is a pretty stylistic effect that we've just taken. Let me zoom in for you guys. I'm always thinking you can see. We've got this pretty cool person walking with water with the glitch. And that's just some random effects that I pulled together, and we're doing this all live. But I think it looks pretty cool. Just imagine if you did things a little intentionally at home, what kind of cool effects you could create. And lastly, if you ever did all that work and you don't want to lose it, you can always go to Effects. You can always go to your Effect Controls panel. And let's say I really liked those settings that I just put on the VR digital glitch. I spent all this time tweaking it. I can right-click, Save as Preset, and I can name that the Bild glitch. And there's different types. If you have keyframes, it'll even save your keyframes and anchor them to the endpoint of your footage or scale them across the length of your footage. And I press OK, then I can go to my effects panel. And inside the effects panel, you always have your presets folder. And these are all the different presets that you've made. You can save them from project to project and apply them onto different footages and different clips so you don't have to do the work all over again. So one final thing I'll say to you guys before we go into some Q&A is, although we I've been showing you all these cool creative effects and things that you can do to your footage and add to your footage. In general, editing video, also always try to think about, our job is to trim and remove and cut things down to be their best short essence. So don't always think about what can I add. Try to also think about sort of unediting the video, or like, what can I take away to make this video the best it can be. So thank you guys for checking out this little demo for me.
We have time for some questions. Oh, I have one back here.
But again, he will be outside after this, so we'll probably have to limit it for like 2 or 3 questions.
Sure, and I'll be outside.
We have someone back there.
Hello. I wondered whether or not you have any tricks for fixing any overexposure within a video. I've seen a lot of videos, and I find that oftentimes it's not exactly what I'm looking for. So thank you.
Sure. Like I was showing in the Lumetri color earlier, you do have all your basic correction, like exposure and whatnot, but I will say, if the information is just not there from the camera, like let's say you shot it and it was just overblown out, you might not be able to make something from nothing. But if you're shooting in RAW and you do have those options, definitely go into the Lumetri color panel, go into the basic correction, and you can even open up the Lumetri scopes, which you might have been seeing pop up here. And this will even sort of show you some more information on if things are overblown out or not. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no magic like making stuff appear that wasn't captured from the camera. That might not be the answer that you wanted. But other than that, there's some good tools in the Lumetri color panel.
All right, so my question is, usually my default when I'm busy working with effects is just to go straight into After Effects. How did you develop this idea to still stay in Premiere? Like, just the thinking behind staying in Premiere, if you can give some tips.
Sure.
Because naturally, I'll just go to After Effects.
Yeah, well, there's definitely nothing wrong with going to After Effects. Whatever I showed you here, After Effects has some really even more powerful stuff. But I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of stuff that you could just do in one program like Premiere. You can really get creative with the blending modes and the different effects. And my thinking with it is, we all hate clicking the thing. You ever accidentally click the program and then it starts opening and then you have to try to force quit? I mean, as many times as I don't have to do that, I won't mind it. So if I can just do something in Premiere, I will do it. And I think that also comes with knowing the tools. So if you didn't know there's this extract effect, you might think you got to go to After Effects, but there's a lot of crossover. So yeah.
One more right here.
Do you have a resource for learning new techniques or whatever? I'm self-taught, and by the time I got to Adobe Classroom in a book, I realized I already knew most of what I had, was doing in the tutorials. I was wondering if you had a different resource.
Sure. Well, first of all, for anyone, not to like shamelessly self-promote, but on my channel I do have 1,000 videos that go more in depth on stuff that I couldn't quite cover here. And not only myself, but there's also a lot of my colleagues and even some of the other speakers here. There's some really great stuff that you can find available for free on YouTube. And if you really even want more, there's great courses online. But as someone who's self-taught myself and maybe from this internet generation, I really find there's just so much information on YouTube, industry professionals and whatnot that share their info. And you might just got to dig through the playlist for some of those videos that go on more advanced topics, not just the ones with the most views about how to keyframe. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. If anyone else has any other questions, I'll be out in the hallway.